Okay, so Oana, thank you very much for taking the time today to talk to me and to record this video for the students at the University of Waterloo. The first question I've got for you is if you could please tell us a bit about yourself and what your job is now and what your career path was to the role that you play now in Nunavut.
Sure. My current job is Executive Director of the Nunavut Broadband Development Corporation, affectionately known as NBDC. NBDC is a nonprofit that works to ensure that people in Nunavut have equal, affordable, and reliable internet access in all communities, and also to help develop local capacity in ICT. I got here through a very circuitous route. My education, my undergrad is in biology and environmental science, and initially I was interested in pursuing environmental law, but I was very involved in the environmental movement and in community radio in undergrad, and it quickly became clear that communications was really where the battleground was as opposed to the courtroom. So I kind of shifted gears towards communications. I stayed involved in community radio, and that was the time that the internet was really starting to take off, and so it was just a natural progression to move from radio to the internet and doing stuff online. I worked in community radio and a lot of media organizations for most of my working life, usually community-based organizations or arts groups. And one of the groups I worked with was Igloolik Isumo Productions. They're a film company based in Igloolik, Nunavut, which is a community north of Nunavut, where I am now. And that's when I first came up to Nunavut and, got off the plane. I think the next day we went to the Flow Edge, which is this amazing area. You're on frozen ice and there's the water right in front of you. It was springtime, the most beautiful time to be here. And I knew at that moment that I really wanted to live here. So eventually I made my way up permanently. I continued to work for the film company as they were moving into new media. And I worked for the government of Nunavut briefly. And then I joined NBDC about 3 years ago because anyone that lives up here is frustrated by the level of service and the high cost. And I thought I could, it's fun to kind of play with gadgets and be involved in the production or the technical side, but if I wanted to see the situation improve, I really had to go at it from the policy side or from the policy side to really try to get better service up here.
Very interesting. So what would you say are the main information technology issues facing Nunavut today?
Well, as I mentioned, there's the service levels here are substantially lower than what you have in urban Canada. So there's a growing gap between service levels between Nunavut and southern Canada, and that's one of the largest issues facing Nunavut. The need to build capacity, like HR capacity, and develop skills is also a huge challenge because it's one thing to have the bandwidth, have the infrastructure, but if people don't have the digital literacy skills to take advantage of it, then it might as well not be there. And tied to that is the slow adoption of ICT, partly because of the skill shortage, but also because of the service levels. NBDC did a socioeconomic impact assessment earlier this year, and often the answer was, yeah, I'm going to do that when I get better service because the service isn't good enough for me to, be engaged in e-commerce or distance education or not.
Okay, so the internet, as I understand it, it became broadly available, or more broadly available maybe, in Nunavut in 2005. What impact would you say, what are the main things that it has impacted since then?
Well, you're right. Before the launch of the Nunavut-wide Kinnick network, the only internet access available in Nunavut was dial-up, and even then it was only available in a handful of communities. And so when Kinnick was available in all 25 communities at the same service level, at the same cost, that was really maybe revolutionary is an overstatement, but I think the impact can't be overstated. The Nunavut Economic Outlook said that the money spent to bring broadband infrastructure to every community in Nunavut might one day be viewed as the greatest infrastructure breakthrough in the territory. And now people take it for granted. Now people are complaining that the service isn't fast enough, that the bandwidth cap is too low. So it's, we've gotten to the point like of Canada where people expect to have connectivity and expect to have access to certain things. I don't know if you followed it, but October 6th of last year, the satellite that serves most of, all of Nunavut and parts of Northwest Territory and Yukon, Anik F2, had a 18-hour outage. So all telecommunication services were down. There was no long-distance phone. There was no internet. I believe some of the satellite phones were working, but by and large, what most people had access to was down. And and again, NBDC did a survey. We like surveys. One of the biggest sentiments that came out of it is that people felt really isolated because they couldn't get in touch with anyone outside of their community. They didn't know what was going on. And when the service first went down, nobody knew, is it just localized in my community? Is it my computer? Is it, So there's quite a bit of concern. So I think the overall impact is that with internet access, you can overcome the kind of geographic isolation that is here because you have such a large area and such a small population.
Absolutely. And what have the technical challenges been with making the internet work there?
I would say that the challenges are probably not so much technical. I mean, to understand the challenges of ICT in Nunavut, you really need to understand Nunavut. And the territory has over 33,000 people, predominantly Inuit, with 25 communities spread over 2 million square kilometers. That's a fifth of Canada's landmass, 40% of. And the communities can range from 200 residents, such as Greece Fjord, which is the most civilian settlement in North America, and the smallest of Nunavut's communities, or the capital, which has around 7,000. All communities are flying, and there's no terrestrial transportation infrastructure, so there's no roads in Nunavut or between communities. So it's entirely satellite served, and it's all fly. In the summer, you get lift boats. So if you have any major damage to your communications infrastructure, it might be a while before you can actually get somebody there to fix it or get the equipment that you need to replace it. It also has a really high birth rate. It has a very young population. It has, unfortunately, very low high school graduation rates. There's a huge disparity in terms of income. So there's a lot of social challenges and challenges of ICT or getting internet in Nunavut, because by and large those have been addressed.
Okay, and the impact, on local culture. Have you seen the internet impacting, how culture has developed or perhaps changed over the last 7 years?
Yeah, definitely. I think we can see that the internet has had an impact on local culture. I'll give you an example of the company I used to work for, Isuma. They run a website, Isuma TV, and it's like the YouTube for Indigenous video. And so if you want Inuktitut language videos, that's where you go. People can upload it, you can view it. And I think that one of the, constantly there's this debate about the effect of the internet on minority languages. Does it actually help protect and promote these languages because it gives these languages a platform to express themselves, or does it hinder them because the internet is so dominated by English that you're going to lose your language because you're surfing in English? So I think, Isuma and other initiatives like that are really, cultural portal show that the internet can positively impact culture. There's an organization here that developed a website to teach Inuktitut as a second language. Tusaramba is the name of the website, and that's another example of how the internet can be used positively. It has different levels. It has audio files. You can go online and listen to the words being pronounced properly, and it's a resource that you can access from anywhere. So if you're, in Ottawa and you want to learn Inuktitut, there you go. I'll give a couple of examples from Facebook as well. It's been in the media, but the food security issues and the cost of food up here, and somebody set up a Facebook group, Feed My Family, and that got a lot of people involved. And Inuit were organizing, not just people in Nunavut, were organizing protests in front of the grocery store demanding better food prices. And that's something that, maybe in Southern Canada, there is more of this kind of activist, confrontational culture, but here it's very rare that there would be such a confrontation. And so that was a tool for people to say, we have to get organized and we really have to express ourselves and get public awareness, not just within Nunavut, but within Canada as well as in terms of food security issues here. Another example from Facebook is sell and swap pages. So almost like classifieds. People can go online and say, hey, I have this thing to sell, I'm looking for this thing. And I think that's really interesting because it's helped to the traditional economy in terms of selling country food like caribou or fish for seal or things of that nature. And also traditional clothing. People go post, oh, I have these sealskin mitts for sale and I just made them, or I'm looking for sealskin mitts. So I think those are all examples of how the internet has positively impacted local culture and even the local economy.
Very interesting. So the people's access we're starting to see in other parts of the world at health, education, welfare services being delivered through the internet. Are you seeing that start to happen in Nunavut now?
I'd say a little bit still in the early stages. The use of telehealth and distance education is quite modest, but NBDC hopes to work with the territorial government to improve that. And one of the projects that we actually initiated was to get improved connectivity into the territory's 43 schools. So that project went live last year, and we're getting great feedback from teachers who are able to pull content from the internet for their schools, and students who are able to do research and even submit their homework online. So I think that definitely we see the benefits. It's just a matter of changing the current practices that are in place.
Have you seen it start to be used by local businesses?
A little bit. I mean, again, the socioeconomic impact assessment that we did, we had one questionnaire that was for businesses, and we found that they're going for the low-hanging fruit. They're using online banking, financial management, supplier communications, research. They're not really using integrated supply management or customer relationship management or e-commerce. Those more sophisticated applications, and partly because a lot of businesses are quite small, like 2, 3, maybe 5 people, so there's nobody else who really has that skill set to say, hey, this could actually help us be more efficient or get greater profit. And also what some of the respondents said is they're waiting for better internet access to be able to take advantage of some of those applications. So I think, they're aware of potential, but the uptake right now is not where it should be.
Okay, and the impact, on the activities of the Nunavut government, has that changed much so far, and do you see it changing in the future?
I think it'll have to change. The government is relatively young. Nunavut was formed in 1999, so we've got a 12, 13-year-old government, and it's struggling to deliver its core services. There's always a substantial vacancy rate in all departments. I think almost 30%. So, 30% of the positions are not filled, and so it's this kind of conundrum because you could actually possibly deliver more services or better services if you did more of it online, but you just don't have the capacity to actually transition because you're still trying to deliver whatever services you're currently delivering with being understaffed. But I think that there's definitely a recognition that they do have to move to do it more online, and they realize that they'll achieve certain efficiencies. It's just kind of trying to, add an addition to the house while making sure your foundation's not sinking. Like they still have to deliver their services while they're acting on new services.
That makes sense. So my next question is around young people in Nunavut. I mean, are you seeing any specific changes there? Are they, we see certainly in southern Canada, the internet being something that young people have been drawn to for a number of years now and spend a lot of time there. Do you see the similar things happening in Nunavut?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that youth in Nunavut are having the same reaction to the internet that youth in southern Canada are having. And I think more so because you're talking about these small communities of a couple hundred people or even a couple of thousands, but it's a small town, and to be able to go online and really see the world, I think that that's probably an experience that youth in Nunavut have. That if you're a kid growing up in Toronto, you're not going to have that same need because you might not feel as isolated. So I think that's definitely one of the major impacts that it's having. Also, families are spread all over, so you can grow up in one community, but you have relatives in another community, and family ties are really, really strong. So being able to keep in touch with family as well, I think is probably another important impact.
Yep, that makes sense.
I was just going to say I have a 19-month-old, and he picks up my phone. He's already figured out most of the things on the phone, and it's just amazing how it's second nature to young kids to just take technology and play with it. And I think one of the things that maybe kept people in older generations back is this fear of, am I going to break it? Or I don't know what I'm doing. And kids just don't have that. They're really fearless.
Absolutely. They'll try it until they understand it. So I've just got two questions left, Oana. The first is, we've talked about a lot of things to do with the internet and Nunavut. Are there any areas that we haven't covered that you think it would be useful for people at the University of Waterloo to understand?
Yeah. Well, our service here, I would say, is in peril. We're 100% satellite served at the moment, and so we're depending on federal government investments to trade the high cost of satellite bandwidth, and that investment ends in 2016, and right now there's nothing in place to succeed it. And I think most people take internet access for granted in the modern world. It's become a necessity, and it's even more so in a remote area like Nunavut. But unlike other countries like the US or the UK or Australia, Canada doesn't really have a national broadband strategy or plan. And what we've seen over the last 10 to 15 15 years is that Canada has actually slipped from being, one of the best connected countries in the OECD to being really in the bottom of the list. So, the debate that's happening right now in Nunavut, like literally, you can look into CBC articles about it, is about fiber versus satellite. There's a proponent that wants to play fiber through the Northwest Passage, and that would provide service to some of the communities. And I think that, the real question isn't really about technology. It's not about fiber versus satellite. It's really about policy, and it's answering questions like, is it important that Nunavut has internet access? Is it important that all communities in Nunavut have internet access with similar levels of service at the same price point and something that's comparable to Southern Canada? And they figure out the technology to do it and the funding model to deliver it. So, definitely a role for technology, because you can't just kind of wish something, blink your eye, put your nose in it, it'll happen. You need to have the technical solutions to happen. But I think that above that, you need sort of a policy or some kind of guiding principles that says this is what we want the technology to do.
No, that makes sense. And certainly as I've looked around the world at the levels of connectivity that we're seeing in more remote areas, on my visit to Iqaluit a couple of weeks ago, I saw that the level of service there was connectivity, but the level was in some areas, not as good as I've seen it in other parts of the world, which I would have expected in some ways that we would have perhaps a stronger approach to creating the infrastructure in Nunavut.
In a lot of ways, Nunavut is quite fortunate because we have benefited from several rounds of investment, particularly targeted at rural and remote areas, to get some connectivity there. There's parts of northern Manitoba or northern Alberta, northern Saskatchewan that have much worse access. There's parts of southern Ontario that are, probably within view of the Trans-Canada Highway that may not have a decent level of service. And I think that that's why we really need to think about kind of a national broadband strategy or national broadband plan, the way that other countries such as the U.S., UK, Australia have really put forward. They have a national approach, and it's not just, okay, well, we have this 2-3-year program and it'll help of the population there, and we'll have another program after that.
That makes sense to me. So the last question that I've got for you, Oana, is one that I ask everyone I interview that is going to be used for classes at Waterloo. And the question is, as the students come towards the end of their degrees and they're either going to go to work or maybe move on to further studies, most of them, do you have any advice based on the time that you've spent beyond university that you would like to give them?
Sure, I have a few. I guess I would say the first one is never stop learning. I don't think you necessarily always need to learn in a formal university context, but you should don't assume that once you have your degree, you have your piece of paper, that's it. You need to be curious, inquisitive, or pick up things, because I think you need to always be willing to learn things. I think the second piece of advice I would say is don't give up on your ideals or your principles. It's very important to still be idealistic and optimistic and try to make the world a better place. Don't choose a career path because of what's available at the time. I think that can change drastically from one year to the next, or one decade to the next. And if you pick something because you think you're going to be set for life doing it, you might be really miserable and disappointed. And I guess the last bit is to get involved in your community, like seek out volunteer opportunities or something, so you have some attachment to where you live and the people around you.
It sounds like good advice, Oana. Can I just say, thank you for taking the time today to talk to me and to record this for the students at Waterloo. I think we've talked about some topics that are going to be very interesting to them, and certainly to think about the impact that the internet is going to have in Nunavut, particularly at this early stage in its development, is very interesting. So thank you for talking to me today, Oana.
You're welcome.